Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get Real with Jack and Cindy. I'm Cindy Morrison.
And I'm Jack Wallace. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Can you believe the buyer-broker agreement has been in place officially a year and now a month?
Yep.
Many states, like Oklahoma, implemented it early with the lawsuit that was going on, the class action lawsuit. But we just kind of wanted to walk you through how we got here, why we've had the last year that we've had, and where we are now.
I think it's also, we were kind of, and maybe I should say because I can take responsibility for myself. I was a little bit like the sky is falling because it was such a unusual thing. I didn't ever use a buyer-broker agreement.
I didn't either.
To me, I felt like it was cornering somebody into something. I just didn't like that. But whenever we were told we had to do it, I will say there have been some advantages to, and I'm not talking about from our standpoint, I'm talking about the public's standpoint, because at the end of the day, that's really what I care about.
Exactly.
And the public have had some benefits from it because it's very spelled out what is happening and what will happen. But I think now we've done it in long enough, we've had the form long enough that we've seen case studies and how it works that we can truly explain it, where in the beginning we were explaining it as best we understood it was going to be.
Exactly. So to hit pause just a minute on where we are now, the history of this, if you're wondering what the heck we're talking about, basically there was a group of sellers in Missouri who decided that they should not have to pay their listing agent's commission and the buyer's agent's commission. By the way, that was always negotiable. They never had to pay that, but they did. You have to remember, most comps, when we pull the comps, are on 6 or 7%, kind of what's popular in your area. That's already within that number that we're looking at that your house is worth.
And we were required to advertise. This was from the government. We were required by the government to record what percentage the seller was willing to pay the buyer's agent.
Exactly.
By the government, we had it in there. So we were sued because by putting it in there, they felt like we were price fixing.
And they also felt like it was collusion because the seller would pay the listing agency, and the listing agency would then pay the buyer's agency. So,
which you can follow that logic, and that's fine. But whenever it was a mandate, we were following the law that had been established, and then we were getting sued and being told we were in the wrong and would have to pay these huge fines unless we changed our wicked ways that were. So anyways, that's kind of where this whole thing landed, and then NAR settled.
Yes, we should probably mention that the people who sued got $8 each. $8 each.
Except the attorneys.
Oh, they made out like bandits.
And now they're back trying to do something else. But
yeah,
that's another story. So anyway, so that's how we got to where we are. And now here we are. And I will say there's been parts of this that, I mean, first of all, I'm just going to be honest. I just read a report, and the hope was by the government again and by the entities that were doing this, that the rate of commission would go down by doing this. It's only gone up. It's gone up because then in a free market society, people are negotiating and people can ask for what they want and negotiate hard, and a lot of buyers would not take the deal unless you pay their agent what they want. I mean, so it's been a very interesting thing. I think we're kind of in the same range now, but it statistically it's actually gone up. So
and how, as a buyer's agent, how we get our commission, it actually, as opposed to being listed somewhere, here's how much I'm going to pay the buyer's agency. Now that is part of the contract. You actually turn in a compensation agreement asking for your commission. If the seller isn't going to pay it, then the buyer's going to pay it. And I've had some sellers ask about that. Buyers are barely scraping by getting their closing costs, getting their down payments. They really don't have that extra 3%. And remember, sellers, you don't get paid until you have a buyer.
Now, some buyers have said, you know what, let's negotiate hard on the price and I'll pay you the compensation. So that does sometimes happen, but that's however they want to play that. That's rare. It's still mostly paid by the seller. But so that's the contract. But before we get to the contract, let's talk about what the buyer broker is. And first of all, let's talk about the legality of it. If I am a listing agent and I have the listing and you want to come see my listing, I can show you the listing without a buyer broker. And my understanding is if you're with my company, the brokerage owns the listing. So, and I send you because I can't be there, but you're representing the company. Again, you don't need a buyer broker to show the person the house.
Kind of doing it by proxy.
Right. However, or if you come to my open house or anyone's open house, so it doesn't even, again, have to be the listing agent who's at the open house. If you come to an open house, you do not need to sign a buyer broker to come to the open house. So I think that's very important for the public to know. If a realtor is telling you as the listing agent that you have to sign this for them to show you the property, that is not legally true. If you go to an open house and they were trying to get you to sign one of these to show you the property, that is not true. If you decide to make an offer and they're going to represent you, then yes, you have to sign the buyer broker. Is that clear? I think that's
as mud.
Yeah, well, but I think that was one of the things we didn't know exactly all that. So I think it's really important as the public that you understand. You sign these whenever you are wanting representation from one person to show you a lot of properties. You want somebody to show you a listing that isn't their listing because you want them to be the person who represents you if you buy that listing. But if it's a listing agent and you're just going to see that property and that's it, or you're at an open house, you do not have to have a buyer broker legally to view the house.
Another interesting thing in the buyer broker agreement, so let's say you're the buyer, I'm the buyer's agent, we talk about the buyer broker agreement, and you have to put down how much you're going to compensate me, or you are willing to compensate me, whether it's a dollar amount or a percentage. You know, a lot of times they're like, well, I could maybe only pay you 1%. If you put 1% in that document, then if I take you to a house where they're going to pay my commission, I can't get more than 1%.
Yeah.
But if we put 3% in the document, for example, then I will be able to get up to 3%. It's always a negotiation down. It is never a negotiation up with this new buyer broker agreement.
I want to read this verbatim because I think it says it really. Buyer shall pay the broker at closing an amount of equal to dollar or percentage of the final gross selling or lease price. Buyer shall receive a credit towards the payment of compensation in an amount equal to any payment made to the broker by any other broker or seller. So that's where that's the 1-2 punch. So if we're showing you houses and we put down 3% and the other side says we'll pay 2%, then you may be on the hook for paying the 1%, but the hope is that you're going to match up those things. But you're going to have to agree to whatever that compensation is when you sign the contract, so you'll know what you're getting.
Correct.
But by saying you get a credit back from whatever is paid by the seller or the other broker, what they agree to, then that tells you right there that you're not just saying, I'm going to pay that no matter what. Because that was our big concern, was when somebody does not have the money and they're putting that they'll pay that and they don't have the money. But it's a 1-2 punch. They do that, plus then in the compensation you make up how much is going to get back out of that.
And we can't.
It's still confusing, and I know that, but it's a little bit more clear that way.
Yes, and we can't work for free, because we also have mortgages we have to pay and children to put through college and dogs to take care of and life to live. So we can't work for free, but also our errors and omissions insurance.
Well, actually, that isn't true. I'm going to correct you on something.
So that's new. I mean, like that.
No. I'm going to correct you on something. we do work for free a lot.
Oh, well, that's okay.
Because you're signing this in case you do buy something. But if you don't, we have worked showing you houses, paying for gas, paying to our time, giving up. So, like, there is a lot of risk in our business. People think, oh, you get paid this, but we oftentimes don't get paid because you do a lot of work that doesn't, and no one has to pay you for that. Or if a listing doesn't sell, you don't pay us. So that whole "we don't work for free" isn't really
You're
true.
exactly right.
But
you are exactly right.
But when we do a deal,
yes,
then we need to be compensated. And now back to errors and omissions.
Yeah. So, and I was going to say, I just had clients from out of state that, dropped everything to help them every time they flew in, and then they didn't end up transferring.
It happens, yeah.
So, but errors and omissions, if we do a deal for free, then we're not covered by our errors and omissions insurance that we pay to help cover us. So you can't expect your agent to not get paid for a variety of reasons. You wouldn't walk into a dress shop and say, hey, I'm just going to take this dress. It looks really great on me, so you walk out without paying.
Well, it's even like, I have to explain to people sometimes, okay, so if you use your aunt who has a estate suddenly, instead of me who's been your real estate agent forever, which is fine. I understand sometimes that happens, and I was that person when I first started, so I'm not saying that's never the right thing. But if that is the case, you need to rely on that person and their manager and not try to call and get information from me. And here's why. Because if I tell you what I think as a professional, I don't have errors and omission insurance, and that's putting me in a really bad place because I'm acting as a real estate professional on your behalf without compensation, without errors and omission.
Right.
So that's where it gets into a real zone that we have to be very careful of. So
I completely agree. So the buyer broker agreement, I would say on a scale from 0 to 100 is probably an 80. Wouldn't you score maybe there?
I don't. Yeah.
75, 80.
I think
it's better than we thought it was going to be at first.
It's a required thing.
Ugh.
That's right. Ugh. I mean, I think it's.
We 100% have to do it, but
here's my problem. Just so we're just completely upfront.
Because it is about getting real.
My problem is that this is all supposed to be in the idea of more transparency, which I am in favor of.
Yes.
But I just think that, like anything we're dealing with right now, when it comes to government or with any of this, when they say transparency, what they really mean is we're going to make you feel good about what we did, even though we didn't solve anything. I don't think this really has solved anything. It's just it's an agreement that was reached, and here we are. But here we are, and the other thing that's interesting too is there are some things in this agreement that you should know. And one of the things is you are not stuck. So let's say you go to an open house. Let's just get a scenario, because I've had this scenario a couple of times. You go to an open house. You like the house. You should have called Jack. You should have called Cindy because we're your realtors. But you didn't, and that's okay. You got caught up. It was a good deal. You didn't want to miss it. You're out. And so you have that agent write up that house, and you sign one of these, and you agree to 60 days with that person to do the buyer broker. And then in the process of inspections, you figure out, oh wait, this house is not what I want. This is not the house. The inspections aren't what I think is. I want out. So you get out of that deal. But then you go, but now I'm stuck with this person because I signed a buyer broker with them, not for that house, but in general.
For 6 months.
Now, at the top it says property identifier, and if you put the address at the top, different story. But if they leave that blank, it's just, you're my buyer. I have you as a buyer. So then people have come to me and said, I would love to use you now, but I'm stuck. I signed a buyer broker for 60 days. Let me just go through this. A lot of realtors aren't going to like me doing this, but I think it's important. I mean, again, if we're going to be transparent, let's be transparent.
Agreed.
This agreement may be canceled by either party. That's important too. We have the right to do it too, by providing at least 3 business days notice in writing unless buyer is under contract to purchase the property. Buyer's termination of agreement does not relieve buyer of the obligation to compensate broker for purchase agreements executed within 60 days after termination, if the property acquired was presented to buyer through broker services of brokers. So if I showed you 10 properties and you end up going to another person and you buy one of those 10, I could come back on you. But if you go and you only see new properties that I've not shown you, and you terminated with me,
and you terminated in
3
writing,
days in writing, texting or email or whatever, then you're done. You get to move on. So if you've just done one thing at somebody who showed you a house that was their listing, and it was just that house, and that's all you dealt with them, and you signed this, you can send them a text and say, I went out of this house, and I'm giving you notice that I wouldn't like to get out of the buyer broker and move away from that agreement. Just think that's important, because I hear that over and over, people saying, oh, I think I'm stuck as I signed. Now, if you want to be stuck, that's great. You can definitely say, I'm under contract and I'm a person of my word, or whatever you want. But if somebody has put this into, like, because we have to have it for this deal, and then they're saying, well, now you're stuck with me for 6 months. No, you're not. It is there unless they have marked that out and you agree to that mark out.
And I've heard the same thing a lot of times when people go on Zillow or some of these other third-party sites and it says request a showing. A lot of times they think that they're contacting the listing agent. You're not. You're getting agents that paid for.
And you will have to sign a buyer broker for them to show you that. So that's where people think they have to sign it when they're going with the listing agent. So if you show up at a house, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
But I'm going to.
We were on the same thought process.
Yeah, if you show up to a house and someone says, and you think you're looking at with a listing agent, and they say you have to sign this, you need to realize they need to put that property address on the top if you're going to go ahead and let them show you the property. Because when you walk through that door, then they are the person, but they are not the listing agent.
And you've never met them before. So they may be on a team and have been in real estate 2 days. Nothing wrong with that. But I mean.
But you may have specifically asked to see it through the listing agent for a reason. You may want the listing person for a reason. And if you show up thinking that is the person, and then you go into this and realize they're a completely different company, a different broker, they've never seen this property, they don't know anything about it, then you've been bamboozled.
Yep. So just remember, if you feel forced at the moment to sign something, you don't have to sign it and you can walk away. But if you want to see the property, have them put the address on there, vet your agent, and make sure that's somebody you want to continue working with. But you can get out in 3 business days to work with someone else.
And if you show up and they say you have to sign this, then ask them, are you the listing agent? If they're the listing agent, then you can say, I don't want to sign it.
Right.
I just want to see the property. I'm not wanting you to represent me. And you look at the property. But if it's somebody who has to have you sign this to look at the property, they're not the listing agent.
So a lot of little things. The funny thing is we're really back to where we were a year and a half ago, I feel like, except for we don't put the buyer broker commissions on MLS or advertise it anywhere. And you have to sign a buyer broker agreement with a brokerage and the agent before you can see a house, unless you go to an open house or you'll call the listing agent to see their listing.
The other thing that is important is it says in 14, copy of agreement. Buyer acknowledges receipt of a copy of this agreement and a copy of the disclosure to buyer or broker duties, responsibilities, and services. So if nothing else, they should let you take photographs of these. I mean, photographs. How old am I? They should let you snap a picture of them. They should, have duplicates with them. But by signing this, you're saying you received that copy. So if they have you sign it and they take it and you didn't get a copy, you said you did. So that's an important thing. Get a copy of this for yourself.
And I always try. Now, I had an instance the other day that I had to do it on the spot. But generally, I will meet with them at my office, go over all that, have them sign that. It's also so I can vet them and make sure, you know, they do have a pre-qual letter from the bank and, you know, all the things. But, you know, your agent really should talk with you and explain it prior to showing up, where suddenly you're under the gun to sign something that you haven't studied, you don't know anything about, but yet you have to sign it to see that property that maybe, as interest rates are dropping, may be a hot property, and if you wait too long you may miss it. So, you know, other than that,
and you're agreeing to a lot on here, and you need to know, and like in section 9 it says seller offer equal to compensation if the amount of compensation offered by the seller is equal to the compensation listed in paragraph 7, the buyer shall not be obligated to separately pay the compensation listed in paragraph 7. So it spells it out two places that the seller can pay that and you're not paying it. So, you know, it's like the model has still been pretty consistent. You know, the hope on this, I think, was to move it where buyers were paying it.
Yeah,
that was what they really hoped was going to happen, and it's just not panned out.
They just don't have the money, with properties going up so much and so much expense of closing on a house.
Years and generations of doing it the other way, where the seller ended up paying it, but then they got to buy a property and not pay it on that one. So it was like kind of always we'll pay it now because you're going to have more money to get into the house and we won't. And then the other side of it too is people forget the buyers are the ones who bring the money. So the sellers always got this idea of, well, we're the ones with the money. No, you're the ones with the house. So the party that brings the money is really the one who says, you know.
And sellers, and what I've seen the last year and a half, sellers who say, I am not going to pay the commission, generally will not have agents come and show their house. I don't ask before, but some agents do. Before they'll show a house, they ask, what are they offering for compensation? But I've heard sellers say, I'm not going to pay anything. And my answer is, most likely no one will show your house. They would be better suited to refer it to the listing agent and get a referral fee.
But see, that's where it's really, for agents, we are actually in a better position than we were, because before, when that happened, you had agreed that whatever the compensation was being offered on MLS, you would accept when you showed the property. And if they put a crazy MLS, I mean, you would sort of sign that you would do it if you show the property, you'd accept that compensation. So now you're not agreeing to that.
And I
so
don't.
If they don't agree to pay you, then the buyer could end up being responsible for paying you. So the sellers that used to pull that got by with it, I think, easier before this buyer broker service. So in some ways it has really kind of, it was supposed to be for the benefit of the public, and it's kind of become a little bit of the benefit to the broker in a way, and it's hard to argue it. I mean,
and I don't even call and ask what they're offering anymore, because that is part of my negotiation process. Another reason why, as a buyer, you want to have a really strong agent. I always write in there what I think the job I'm doing is worth, and they can agree or disagree with it and, you know, change the contract if they want. The chances are, if you're giving a really strong contract, it's a little harder to mark some things out if you've got that sitting right in front of you and you can almost feel the money of getting paid.
But I've had 2 or 3 deals not go through because the seller either wouldn't pay the compensation or wouldn't pay as much as the buyer requested, and the buyer didn't even want to deal with them because they were like, you know, this person has been my person, has shown me all these houses and they deserve compensation, and they've gone to another house. And I've had the listing on that, and I've had the buy on that, and it's interesting because it's like they become protective of you because they know how much you've given in time. And, you know, as a listing agent, I mostly list. I mean, that's been my thing. And I'm always like, I'm not going to step on the toes of somebody who brings me stuff. I just, like, you know, sometimes you'll get a call and you go show something and then you find out they have an agent, and it's not always fun because you're like, you know, I could have done something with that time, but in the same respect, my job is to sell that house. And so then I'm like, well, who is your agent? And let's get them, you know, on board so that they can do something. And, you know, there's times when I've had to call and apologize and go, my people just didn't know how it worked, and I'm sorry. So it's like, you want that same grace.
Right.
You know?
Well, I think open communication with your agent and doing some research on this will really be a benefit. And how do you pick an agent? Well, we're going to talk about, with the new buyer broker agreement, some ways that you can find an agent if you don't already have one, or know one or several or 10 or 20, or it keeps growing. But
it's actually getting smaller.
It is getting smaller now.
It used to be everyone knew about 10 realtors. I think now it's about 3 or 4 because so many people have gotten out of the business over the last 2 or 3 years.
It is not an industry that is for the faint of heart at all.
Evil Knievel.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we'll talk a little bit about how buyers can find agents if they don't know someone. That will be super fun for them. So we're going to talk about that next week.
And I want to leave everyone with this. You have 3 days to terminate this agreement if you are not happy.
Yes.
Doesn't mean you use it as a power play or to abuse it, but just know if you are not getting called back, if you are not getting what you have the right to terminate with 3 business days.
Absolutely.
In writing. Thank you.
All right. Well, I love that. Thank you for leaving us with that, and we will see y'all next week.